The grand mansion glowed beneath the twilight sky, windows ablaze with warm golden light. Inside, laughter echoed from a luxurious dining room, where crystal chandeliers sparkled above a lavish feast. At the head of the ornate table sat Richard Langston, powerful, magnetic, handsome, with a physique sculpted by wealth and privilege. Beside him, Isabella Langston, alluring and curvaceous, laughed seductively, unaware of the shadow lingering just beyond the door. From the hallway, the maid, Lucia, watched silently, her deep brown eyes shimmering with bitterness. She clenched her fists, knuckles whitening, heart pounding with a painful memory. Voices from the dining room spilled carelessly toward her. "Who cares about staff feelings?" Richard chuckled arrogantly. "They're replaceable." Lucia flinched as the cruel words slashed through old wounds, triggering the raw injustice she had buried deep inside. Lucia retreated into the dimly lit kitchen, her movements sharp and precise as she furiously scrubbed the immaculate marble countertops. Memories of humiliation flooded her mind, Isabella mocking her accent, Richard's condescending sneers, the countless belittlements endured daily. Lucia's chest tightened with suffocating rage as she recalled their latest cruelty, firing her younger sister unjustly, laughing as the young girl begged for mercy. Lucia stopped scrubbing abruptly, eyes blazing fiercely in the cold fluorescent light. Her soft lips parted with quiet determination, whispering a vow to herself. They'll pay for this pain, every drop of it. She reached into her apron, unfolding a small, mysterious envelope that contained a single photo. A scandalous secret only she knew. Her delicate fingers trembled slightly. The power she now possessed sent a thrilling shiver down her spine. Early next morning, sunlight streamed through sheer curtains, illuminating Richard's sculpted figure as he confidently adjusted his tie in front of the large gilded mirror. Behind him, Isabella emerged from the marble bathroom, wrapped provocatively in silk. "Tonight's gala will be unforgettable," Richard smirked confidently, glancing appreciatively at Isabella's reflection. Meanwhile, Lucia quietly entered their room, unnoticed, her demeanor submissive yet carefully observant. Pretending to straighten the bed linens, she discreetly slipped the photo into Richard's jacket pocket, her heart racing with quiet satisfaction. "Everything set for tonight?" Isabella purred, approaching Richard with seductive elegance. Lucia silently exited the room, leaving their conversation suspended behind closed doors. As she stepped away, a faint, knowing smile curled on her lips. Her dark method had begun, and the Langstons' perfect world was already unraveling. The opulent ballroom glittered beneath dazzling chandeliers, guests draped in elegance and decadence, a spectacle of wealth. Richard, exuding irresistible charm, effortlessly navigated conversations, unaware of the storm brewing silently. Isabella glided gracefully by his side, her beauty radiating confidence, oblivious to the eyes tracing her every move. Lucia discreetly observed from a shadowy corner, heart pounding, palms damp with anticipation. Her gaze locked on Richard's jacket pocket, knowing that at any moment her hidden secret could ignite chaos. A soft, cruel laugh reached Lucia's ears. Richard, mocking someone less fortunate yet again, feeding Lucia's determination. She whispered quietly to herself, recalling an impactful quote from Gandhi. "Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's need, but not every man's greed." Her resolve strengthened. Justice was not merely revenge, it was moral necessity. Suddenly, Richard's expression shifted subtly, confusion rippling across his handsome features as he reached casually into his jacket pocket. Lucia's heart thudded violently against her chest as he unfolded the photograph. Shock twisted Richard's face. A gasp escaped Isabella's parted lips as she peered over his shoulder. The image, Richard passionately embracing a younger woman who was decidedly not his wife, demanded attention. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Hushed whispers erupted into scandalous gasps. Richard stumbled over explanations, words failing beneath accusing eyes. Isabella, publicly humiliated, staggered back, tears brimming with hurt betrayal. Lucia savored the scene quietly, the first taste of justice warming her heart, yet a small pang of sympathy tugged at her chest. "This is only the beginning?" she whispered defiantly, stepping silently away into the shadows. Back at the mansion later that night, fury erupted. Isabella's tears transformed into vengeful rage, mascara streaking dramatically down her flushed cheeks. Richard stood defensively, his once confident demeanor shattered. Their voices echoed angrily through ornate halls. Unaware, Lucia listened from the dim hallway, heart swelling with triumph. Richard lashed out desperately, blaming everyone but himself, his privileged composure cracking under pressure. "Who did this?" he roared. Lucia's heartbeat quickened as Isabella, driven by anger, spat bitter accusations. "This humiliation is your fault, Richard. You destroyed everything." Lucia silently withdrew to her modest quarters, carefully locking the door behind her. Gazing at her reflection, she saw not a powerless maid, but a woman reclaiming dignity. Still, her eyes hinted deeper pain, secrets yet undiscovered. Lucia knew her next move must be even darker, ensuring this family would fully comprehend the consequences of their cruelty. Morning broke quietly over the Langston mansion, sunlight filtering softly through Lucia's small window. She rose, dressed meticulously in her crisp maid's uniform, a serene expression masking her inner turmoil. Downstairs, tension lingered thickly in the air as Richard stormed into his study, slamming the heavy oak door behind him. Isabella, exhausted and visibly shaken, lingered alone at the breakfast table, untouched coffee growing cold in delicate porcelain. Lucia approached silently, serving her with gentle precision. Isabella suddenly grasped Lucia's wrist, eyes swollen yet sharp with suspicion. "Did you know?" she demanded, her voice quivering. Lucia held Isabella's gaze steadily, voice soft yet deliberate. "I see many things here, Mrs. Langston, but the truth is often hidden behind luxurious facades." Isabella released her abruptly, the maid's cryptic response deepening her anguish, her paranoia intensifying like a fever. Days passed, each moment intensifying the silent torment within the mansion's opulent walls. Lucia continued her duties with impeccable diligence, her calm demeanor betraying nothing of her deeper intentions. Richard, increasingly paranoid, grew erratic, handsome features twisted with suspicion and fear. He berated staff, accused colleagues, isolated himself, consumed by the mystery of the photo's origin. Lucia fed the paranoia subtly, an anonymous note placed discreetly here, whispers of betrayal overheard there, guiding Richard into madness. Isabella's beauty faded as stress eroded her grace, her vibrant eyes dimming under restless nights. One evening, Lucia overheard Isabella whisper to herself bitterly, "How quickly happiness fades, poisoned by lies." Lucia's chest tightened momentarily with empathy, reminded painfully of her sister's tears. Yet she steeled herself once more. Justice demanded this path, no matter how dark. Late at night, Lucia slipped quietly into Richard's study, her movements precise, heart hammering with adrenaline. She navigated carefully through luxurious clutter, stopping before the locked mahogany desk drawer. Gently retrieving a hidden key taped beneath the desk, she opened it swiftly, uncovering sensitive financial documents. Her delicate fingers trembled slightly as she photographed each paper meticulously. Suddenly, footsteps echoed faintly from the hallway. Her pulse surged. She froze momentarily, fear threatening to consume her resolve. A voice, Richard's voice, called sharply from the distance. "Who's there?" Lucia silently closed the drawer, slipping unseen into shadow just as Richard burst into the study, eyes wild and accusing. He scanned the room, sensing intrusion, yet saw nothing. Lucia's breath steadied slowly, her heartbeat calming as Richard retreated angrily. Safe again, she slipped from her hiding spot, knowing her next revelation would utterly shatter the Langstons' carefully constructed empire. At dawn, Lucia stood beneath the mansion's elegant arches, clutching the damning documents close to her chest. Sunlight softly illuminated her determined face, casting long shadows that stretched across the immaculate gardens. The air was fresh, pure, an ironic contrast to the heavy secrets she bore. Suddenly, Lucia's phone vibrated, a notification glowing boldly. Meeting confirmed with investigative reporter. Her heart raced, excitement mingling with apprehension. The road ahead promised chaos, but justice demanded courage. "This family must learn," she whispered fiercely, recalling Martin Luther King Jr.'s words. "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." Lucia straightened her posture, steeling herself, aware that today she crossed a threshold from victim to avenger, driven by deeper forces than mere revenge. That afternoon, in a secluded corner of a downtown cafe, Lucia anxiously awaited the reporter, fingertips lightly tapping her coffee cup. She glanced around nervously, every second stretching unbearably, until a handsome, sharply dressed man strode confidently toward her. "Lucia?" he asked, his voice firm yet compassionate. She nodded slowly, handing over the evidence with trembling fingers. He reviewed the papers quickly, eyes widening with shock and excitement. "This is explosive," he murmured, voice low yet charged. Lucia felt a thrill surge through her chest, vindication within her grasp. "Will it be enough?" she asked softly, urgency in her voice. The reporter locked eyes with her, admiration and seriousness in equal measure. "More than enough. The Langstons' empire is about to crumble." Lucia exhaled deeply, relief flooding her, but also an unsettling premonition. Nothing would ever be the same again. Nightfall brought silence that blanketed the mansion oppressively, an eerie stillness broken only by a sudden, frantic banging at the front door. Richard, startled from restless sleep, stumbled down grand stairs, pulse racing with dread. He flung the massive doors open, confronted by glaring camera lights and a flurry of microphones thrust toward him. Questions erupted like gunfire. "Mr. Langston, can you explain the fraud allegations? Isabella, did you know your husband was involved in financial crimes?" Richard's expression collapsed into horror. Isabella appeared behind him, frozen in disbelief, her face ghostly pale. Lucia watched silently from the hallway, heart swelling with triumphant satisfaction. Cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing their ruin vividly. Every arrogant moment, every humiliation Lucia endured, finally avenged. Yet as she turned away, a haunting question lingered, unspoken. Was destroying their world enough to heal her own shattered soul? The mansion, once a symbol of luxury, now resonated with scandal and disgrace. Days after the media storm, Richard paced his study frantically, handsome features twisted with desperation. Legal letters lay scattered on his desk, each more damning than the last. Isabella sat motionless by the window, once vibrant eyes dull, lost in shock. Lucia passed quietly through the hallway, invisible in her silent triumph. Yet, glimpsing Isabella's hollow gaze, Lucia felt an unexpected pang, a reminder that revenge was bittersweet. "She chose her path," Lucia murmured, pushing guilt away, remembering clearly Isabella's mocking laughter that day her sister begged for mercy. Suddenly, Richard's voice shattered the tense silence, roaring through the halls. "I'll find who did this! I swear!" Lucia's pulse quickened with adrenaline. Her battle wasn't finished, but neither was theirs. In the privacy of her modest quarters, Lucia hesitated before a faded photograph of her younger sister Elena, innocent eyes smiling hopefully into the camera. She gently traced Elena's face, grief and anger intertwining deeply in her heart. "I promised you justice," Lucia whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, tears slipping quietly down her cheeks. "But why does victory feel hollow?" Suddenly, a sharp knock echoed on her door, jolting Lucia from her thoughts. She opened cautiously, finding Isabella standing unsteadily, her once flawless appearance now disheveled, vulnerability painfully evident. "Lucia," Isabella's voice cracked softly, desperation etched into her delicate features. "You're the only one left I can trust. Please, help me." Lucia's heart pounded, conflicted emotions raging. Could she extend mercy to one who'd shown none? Lucia silently led Isabella into her small room, its simplicity a stark contrast to the extravagant mansion. Isabella sat on the humble bed, eyes haunted, mascara smudged, lips trembling. "Everything's gone," Isabella whispered brokenly. "We destroyed others, never thinking the wheel would turn." Lucia, moved by genuine pity, knelt gently in front of her, their roles momentarily reversed. "You can still choose differently," Lucia said softly yet firmly, her voice infused with quiet strength. "Our past doesn't have to define our future." Isabella raised her gaze, finally seeing Lucia clearly, a powerful woman forged through adversity rather than the invisible maid she had dismissed. A fragile understanding passed silently between them. Outside, shadows deepened, promising darker revelations ahead. But in that room, for a fleeting moment, revenge paused, giving way to redemption's fragile possibility. The following morning brought an unsettling calm, the mansion wrapped in heavy silence like the aftermath of a fierce storm. Lucia moved gracefully through her chores, each action measured, her mind consumed with conflicting emotions from Isabella's unexpected plea. Outside, reporters still circled like vultures, hungry for the next scandalous morsel. Richard, increasingly disheveled, had barricaded himself in his study, paranoia festering behind closed doors. Lucia paused near the door, overhearing his frantic whispers. "Someone here betrayed me. Someone close." Her pulse quickened as Richard's suspicion neared the truth. Yet instead of fear, Lucia felt empowered. She was no longer merely his victim. She had become his judge. Turning slowly away, she prepared herself. The darkest secret still awaited revelation. That evening, under the velvety darkness of night, Lucia carefully descended into the mansion's cavernous wine cellar, an opulent maze of vintage bottles and shadows. In the dim glow of her phone's flashlight, she navigated quietly until she reached the far wall, lined with aged bricks. Her delicate fingers traced a hidden seam, pressing firmly. A soft click echoed, revealing a concealed compartment. Inside lay a solitary USB drive, Richard's most devastating secret, proof of corruption far darker than mere financial scandal. Lucia's breath quickened, her eyes reflecting steely resolve. "Justice is blind," she whispered, recalling Abraham Lincoln's powerful words. "Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power." This final revelation would obliterate Richard's false empire. Yet Lucia knew it would cost her deeply. At midnight, Lucia stood at the edge of a deserted bridge overlooking turbulent waters below, gripping the USB drive tightly. Wind whipped violently around her, symbolic of the storm within her soul. She hesitated, the river's fierce currents echoing her own turbulent thoughts. Behind her, headlights pierced the darkness as Isabella stepped hesitantly from a car, approaching cautiously, wrapped in a simple shawl, stripped of arrogance, vulnerable yet brave. "Lucia, please," Isabella pleaded softly. "If you release this, Richard won't be the only one destroyed. Innocent people will suffer." Lucia turned sharply, anger mingling with sadness. "And what about the innocents he already destroyed?" Lucia demanded passionately. "How many more will suffer if I stay silent?" Isabella reached out, gently grasping Lucia's trembling hand. "I won't stop you," Isabella whispered, tears glistening. "But sometimes true strength lies in mercy, not revenge." Lucia's eyes filled with pain, heart torn between justice and compassion, knowing this choice would define her forever. Lucia's heartbeat thundered in her chest, her grip on the USB drive tightening, knuckles turning white against the stormy night. Isabella's words lingered powerfully, echoing relentlessly in her mind. True strength lies in mercy. Lucia's eyes glistened with bitter tears, the relentless wind tossing her dark hair wildly. "How can I forgive the unforgivable?" Lucia whispered, her voice cracking with pain. Isabella gently stepped closer, her presence unexpectedly comforting, her touch soft yet steady. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about freeing yourself from their control, Isabella replied, voice trembling with genuine remorse. Lucia gazed deeply into Isabella's sincere eyes, seeing the truth she feared. Vengeance had only deepened her pain. Finally, Lucia lowered her hand, her grip loosening slowly, a heavy sigh escaping her lips. Maybe mercy is stronger, Lucia murmured softly, her voice filled with fragile hope. At sunrise, Lucia returned quietly to the mansion, the burden of her choice evident in her weary yet peaceful expression. But as she stepped through the grand entrance, a chilling voice sliced through her newfound calm. "Lucia, I've been waiting," Richard growled, handsome features contorted with rage, blocking her path menacingly. Lucia froze, pulse racing, fear momentarily paralyzing her. Richard stepped closer, eyes blazing dangerously. "You betrayed me," he snarled, voice cold and venomous. "I should have crushed you when I had the chance." Lucia, drawing on hidden strength, lifted her chin defiantly, meeting his cruel gaze boldly. "You've already tried, yet here I stand," she said firmly. Richard's face flushed with anger, eyes darkening violently. "You'll regret challenging me," he warned viciously, storming away furiously. Lucia watched him leave, heart pounding, realizing her darkest battle was yet to come. Later that day, Lucia carefully packed her modest belongings, heart heavy yet resolute. Her time at the mansion had ended. She knew she couldn't remain under Richard's threat. Suddenly, Isabella appeared quietly at her doorway, her graceful figure silhouetted softly against the corridor's gentle lighting. "Lucia, you saved me from myself," Isabella spoke quietly, her voice tinged with gratitude and newfound humility. Lucia turned slowly, sadness mingling with warmth. "You showed me redemption was possible," Lucia replied gently, her eyes kind and forgiving. Isabella stepped forward, embracing Lucia warmly. Two women once divided by pain, now bonded by courage and compassion. "Remember," Isabella whispered, tears filling her eyes, "darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that." Lucia smiled softly, recognizing the quote by Martin Luther King Jr., heart swelling with unexpected peace. As they parted, Lucia stepped confidently into her uncertain future, determined to rewrite her story, no longer defined by vengeance, but by the strength to forgive. Lucia emerged from the mansion gates, a gentle breeze caressing her face, symbolizing the fresh start she'd long desired. Yet a sudden screech of tires shattered her momentary peace. Richard's black luxury car blocked her path aggressively, his face contorted with fury. "You think it's over?" he shouted, stepping out menacingly, broad shoulders squared, towering intimidatingly over Lucia. Her pulse quickened, adrenaline surging through her veins. "Your threats won't control me anymore," Lucia retorted, voice surprisingly steady, heart pounding with a courage she didn't know she possessed. Richard lunged forward, grabbing her arm harshly, but his grip was instantly loosened as flashing blue lights flooded the street. Police cruisers screeched to a halt, officers swarming swiftly, drawn by Isabella's timely, anonymous call. Lucia locked eyes with Isabella, who stood watching from the mansion entrance, her face solemn yet resolute. Justice had finally arrived. Handcuffed and humiliated, Richard's handsome face twisted with anger and defeat, camera flashes capturing his dramatic downfall. Reporters swarmed again, scandal reignited, each accusation amplified by the chaotic scene unfolding publicly. Lucia watched silently, emotions swirling, vindication, relief, and a touch of sadness. "How did it come to this?" Isabella murmured softly, approaching Lucia slowly. Lucia turned gently toward her, eyes calm yet wise beyond her years. "Small actions lead to significant consequences," Lucia replied simply, recalling clearly every harsh word, every injustice suffered silently. Isabella nodded quietly, understanding deeply the truth Lucia spoke. "Thank you," Isabella whispered sincerely. Lucia smiled faintly, finally understanding her journey. Justice had freed them both, though the cost had been steep. Now their paths diverged, both forever changed, bound by lessons learned painfully yet powerfully. Days turned to weeks as Lucia began rebuilding her life, securing a modest apartment, savoring the freedom earned through courage and resilience. News headlines faded, but her scars remained tender, proof of battles bravely fought. One evening, Lucia's phone rang, startling her quiet solitude. She answered hesitantly, heart racing, uncertainty creeping through her voice. "Hello?" A familiar, gentle voice replied warmly. "Lucia, it's Isabella. I hope you don't mind." Lucia exhaled softly, relief washing over her unexpectedly. "I'm glad you called," she admitted sincerely. Isabella paused briefly, then spoke with determination. "I want to help others, those who, like you and your sister, faced injustices silently." Lucia's heart swelled warmly, feeling deeply moved. "Together, we can heal wounds deeper than revenge ever could," Lucia responded earnestly. In that moment, their alliance was sealed, not forged by vengeance, but by a shared commitment to justice, compassion, and the enduring power of redemption. Months later, a soft twilight bathed Lucia's cozy new apartment in warm, comforting hues. She stood in front of a small crowd, gathered intimately in her modest living room, faces of women who'd silently borne injustices similar to her own. Isabella, now poised yet humble, sat among them, quietly supportive. Lucia's voice resonated gently but powerfully as she shared her story openly, vulnerability radiating strength. "For so long, I thought revenge was justice, but revenge chains us to those who harmed us," Lucia confessed emotionally. A ripple of understanding spread through the room, heads nodding solemnly. "Real justice frees us, heals us," she continued passionately, eyes shimmering with conviction. Isabella smiled softly, witnessing Lucia's transformation firsthand. Lucia's journey had begun with a dark purpose, yet ended illuminating paths for others, a powerful reminder that even the deepest wounds can birth profound purpose. As Lucia concluded her heartfelt talk, applause filled the small room, emotions overflowing, cathartic tears freely shared among strangers turned sisters. Isabella approached Lucia gently afterward, admiration glowing warmly in her expressive eyes. "Your courage is inspiring," Isabella murmured softly, voice filled with sincerity. Lucia's gaze met Isabella's, deep gratitude shining through her humble smile. "We found strength in our pain together," Lucia replied gently. Suddenly, Lucia's phone vibrated softly, an unknown number. She hesitated briefly, then answered curiously. A youthful voice, hesitant yet hopeful, spoke timidly. "Lucia? My name's Sophia. I heard your story and I desperately need your help." Lucia's heart quickened, recognizing immediately a reflection of her younger self. With renewed purpose, she replied tenderly, "You're not alone, Sophia. Together, we'll find your strength." In the weeks that followed, Lucia and Isabella dedicated themselves tirelessly to helping women like Sophia reclaim dignity and justice. Their small support group flourished, transforming pain into collective empowerment, each story igniting new hope. Late one evening, Lucia stood thoughtfully near her window, gazing at the city lights shimmering softly beneath the stars. Isabella joined her quietly, gently touching Lucia's shoulder. "Did you ever imagine our story would end like this?" Isabella whispered, voice tinged with awe. Lucia smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting deep wisdom gained through hardship. "Life's greatest lessons often come from our darkest trials," she reflected quietly, recalling Eleanor Roosevelt's powerful words. "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams." Together, beneath the gentle night, they silently acknowledged their shared transformation. Once adversaries, now allies bound by resilience, forgiveness, and a vision far brighter than the shadows they'd overcome. On a bright spring afternoon, Lucia and Isabella stood proudly in front of a modest building downtown, its door freshly painted, and a vibrant sign reading, Empowerment and Justice Center proudly displayed. Friends, supporters, and women whose lives had been forever changed by Lucia's courage surrounded them, faces glowing with hope. Lucia held back tears, overwhelmed by the beauty of their collective achievement. Isabella stepped forward, her voice steady yet gentle, addressing the gathered crowd. Today, we honor those who faced pain silently, turning scars into symbols of strength. Lucia glanced at Isabella, grateful for her unlikely ally whose redemption inspired so many others. Cameras captured the emotional moment, reporters documenting a new narrative, one defined not by scandal, but by courage and unity. Lucia squeezed Isabella's hand warmly, whispering softly, "From darkness, we've found our light." Inside the newly opened center, Lucia quietly admired walls lined with portraits, faces of women whose stories mirrored her own. Her heart swelled with humble pride, knowing their voices would never again go unheard. Sophia approached timidly, confidence now illuminating her young eyes. "Lucia," she began softly, voice filled with heartfelt sincerity. "You gave me the courage to stand again." Lucia embraced her warmly, tears glistening softly in her eyes, recognizing her sister Elena's memory vividly reflected in Sophia's hopeful gaze. "It was you who reminded me," Lucia replied tenderly, "that our past doesn't define our destiny." Nearby, Isabella smiled warmly, deeply moved by the emotional scene. Their lives, once defined by bitter pain, had now become powerful catalysts for change. Proof that even the darkest methods could ultimately yield the brightest outcomes when guided by compassion. Late that evening, Lucia returned to her modest apartment, the comforting quiet surrounding her peacefully. Alone with her thoughts, she approached a small framed photograph of Elena, smiling softly, her fingers tracing lovingly over her sister's face. Tears filled Lucia's eyes gently, but this time they held only love, forgiveness, and healing. "Justice came at last," Lucia whispered emotionally, "not through revenge, but through mercy." As she looked outside, stars shimmered peacefully above the sleeping city, their silent glow reflecting her inner calm. Lucia knew her journey, filled with darkness and light, had finally come full circle, teaching her life's most powerful lesson. Forgiveness liberates the soul. It removes fear, as Nelson Mandela once profoundly stated. Lucia closed her eyes, smiling gently, heart finally at peace, ready to embrace whatever new dawn tomorrow would surely bring.